figure rule. The use of own figure rule. Students know that there is something called as own figure rule that exists, but students hardly knows how exactly own figure rule applies. How can we make the best use of own figure rule? They don't know. So let us understand it with the help of an example. So let's suppose parent P purchased 80% shares of subsidiary S at $90 million on 1st January 20x1. Net assets on date of acquisition is $88 million and the fair value of NCI on date of acquisition is $22 million. Now tell me, here if the fair value of net assets is NCI is given, meaning thereby NCI is at fair value model, right? So if NCI is at fair value model, so we will take the fair value of NCI to calculate goodwill. So my correct goodwill should be 90 plus 22 minus 88. It should be how much? 90 plus 22 minus 88 is how much? 24. But what a student has done, he took 90 plus he took the proportionate share of net assets. That is 20%. But this is wrong. Minus 88 is equals to 19.6. So this is the correct goodwill. And this is the wrong goodwill. So let me write here. This is correct, this is wrong. But understand, if there is a student who simply writes goodwill is 19.6, he will fetch 0 marks. But if there is a student who has written, okay, that investment is 90 and NCI is 17.6 and net assets is 88, and then my goodwill comes to 19.6, then that student will fetch 2 out of 3. But if you are writing simply 19.6, that student will score 0. Okay. Now, again, the question is saying that the goodwill is impaired by 10%. So now, even if you have calculated 19.6, okay. Now, there are two students. Student 1 who simply writes impairment loss is 1.96. What he did is he calculated 19.6 multiplied by 10% is 1.96. He simply wrote impairment of goodwill is 1.96. You know what? He will get 0 marks. Why? See, because your goodwill was wrong, hence your impairment of goodwill is also wrong. Okay, because the figure is not matching. The figure is wrong. But now there is another student. There is one more student who writes here 19.6 multiplied by 10% is equals to 1.96. You know, this student will fetch 1 out of 1 marks he will fetch. Why? Because the examining team will think, okay, we have already deducted the marks for wrong goodwill. Now, the impairment of goodwill he has calculated correctly on the basis of wrong goodwill. So his knowledge of impairment of goodwill is correct. So let's give him full marks for that. Even though this answer is wrong, still you are getting full marks for the same. Why? The simple reason here is you have given this working. So now what I can say simply here is, for section C questions, give the workings wherever possible. Give your workings. Don't assume anything that examiner will know this. No, write everything, write all the workings, give all the workings possible. The more workings that you give, the more marks that you score. Is that clear, everyone? Are you understanding this part? So now moving further, general comments. Examining team is stating that students are not giving reference. Let's suppose they have in the SOFP. Let's suppose they have calculated goodwill in the working notes and they simply wrote 17.64 is the goodwill. So they should write here, refer following working note. Give the reference. Give the reference, without which how will examiner know? How will examiner know that from where have you calculated this? So give the reference to working notes wherever you are using